My wedding day was one of the most wonderful days of my life. And to add to that, my sister Maz actually became a Christian on that very day.
So my big sister was getting married and she invited me to help her out the week before the wedding. I stayed in a house full of Christians and it was an interesting experience.
Maz hadn't had a lot of exposure to Christians, so when she came to be in my wedding party, I actually stuck her in a house full of Christians so that she could experience God's love there.
It was actually the most beautiful week that I've had in a very long time. So they just loved me where I was at. And at the time I was addicted to drugs and alcohol, and it actually was the first week in a long time that I didn't take drugs or drink for 2 or 3 days in a row. So my sister got married on the Saturday, and on the Friday we were still doing preparations for the wedding, and it got to Friday night and my little sister came to me and said, "Hey, there's this tent crusade thing on, do you want to come?" And I was like, "No, I want to go to the beach and drink beers with my friends." So we didn't go, and the following day was the wedding and it was beautiful. My sister and brother-in-law really centered the day around what Jesus has done for us, and that impacted me greatly.
Now, Maz does not love being in dresses, even to this day, and especially high heels. But for our wedding, we wanted to put her in a dress, of course. She was very accommodating.
I took one for the team and wore a dress and high heels all day. It was amazing. So it got to the end of the day. I was very tired, very emotional as well. Honestly, I didn't want to clean up after the wedding. So to get out of cleaning up, I said to my little sister, "Hey, do you want to go to that tent crusade thing?" And she said, "Yeah, let's go. So we went, and it was nice. There was a whole room full of happy clappy Christians singing and praising the Lord, and I felt a bit out of place, honestly. So somebody gave a talk, somebody else sang, and at the end they did this thing called an altar call. I had no idea what this was, but it was when somebody at the front invited people to give their life to Jesus. My little sister's sitting beside me and she's going, "Give your life to Jesus." And I'm going, "Get stuffed." Because it was a public announcement. And I have lived, up until that time, I had lived my life in hiding. And I was not about to make this public profession of faith.
You know, Maz had heard the news of Jesus a few times before my wedding day, but she just kept saying it's just not for her. And that was heartbreaking for me because I desperately wanted her really to experience the same life-changing things that I had since I had given my life to Jesus. I love my sister Maz so much, and I could see that she was using drugs and drinking a lot of alcohol, and it just made me feel so concerned for her, and something was holding her back from actually receiving God's love.
The reasons I'd lived in hiding was because when I was a child, I was sexually abused when I was 10 years old, and that went on for a couple of years. And then later on, there were some other men that sexually abused me as well. I was so full of shame and self-hatred that I actually entered the sex industry, and I worked in prostitution for about 6 years when I was a teenager. So I was so full of shame and self-hatred that I didn't want anybody to know anything about my life. So we were walking home, and I was thinking, I wonder if God can love me. I wonder if He has enough love to love me even though I've done so many bad things. So when we got back to the house, I asked one of the girls, Anna, if I could talk to her, and she said, "Sure, go into my room, I'll be in there in 5 minutes." So I went in and I sat down on the bed and I was like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I was so scared. But she came in and she said, "What's up?" And I said, "Well, I've been here all week and I see that you guys are so happy. You guys speak to one another with respect. You don't swear at each other. You don't put each other down. You have fun together. You eat meals together. And I feel like I'm digging my own grave. My life is a mess. And I want to know what it is that you have that I don't." And she said to me, "Well, it's a relationship with Jesus. And would you like to have that?" And I said, "Yeah, I would." So she prayed with me. I couldn't speak. I was too scared. And she tucked me into bed and she read me Colossians 3, 1 to 16. And in this Bible verse, it says, "Take off your old self and put on your new self, which has been clothed in Christ Jesus."
Maz called me and she said, "Are you sitting down? Because I've got something to tell you." And I still remember where I was standing, the exact place where I was. She said, "Paula, I've given my life to Jesus and I will never forget that." The change in Maz was visibly significant. We were amazed at what was happening in her life. She'd left drugs, she'd left alcohol, she'd actually left prostitution. It's like before she came to know Jesus, she was in a cage and that cage door had been broken open.
When Jesus enters your life, he wants to go into these places in our lives that we've kept hidden, and that he wants to touch and redeem them and bring restoration and healing to these places. And that is what he has done in my life. So for 25 years now, I have been serving God and walking with him. And in this moment, I actually live in Brazil. And I have the honour and the privilege of working with men and women who work in prostitution on the streets here in Recife, Brazil.
Only God can bring about the 360 change that he has in my life and my sister Maz. I am still amazed that something like this, Hope for the Illawarra, was used in my sister's life to bring about a life 360 change and has given her hope forever.